Welcome to PSYWAR. We are the official podcast of the Psychological Operations Regiment. Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Jurgel, and on this week's episode of PSYWAR, we're hosting two soldiers who made the transition from intel over to psychological operations. So let's get into it. Blake, sir, do you mind introducing yourselves and then give me a little context on your background, and then we'll kick this off.
Yeah. So as of now, I've been in psychological operations for 5 years. Prior, I was signal intelligence analyst with the 1st Infantry Division. Worked at headquarters, did that for 5 years. With psychological operations, I've been on various deployments across Europe.
Okay. And sir, how long have you been over in PSYOP?
Yeah, so Phil, I've been in PSYOP since August 2016 when I graduated the POQC. Since then, I've went on a few deployments. I've went to OIR twice. So Operation Inherent Resolve, deployed to Iraq, and then at the TUSR headquarters in Kuwait there.
Okay, cool. And then how long were you in intelligence before coming over to PSYOP?
Sure. I was in the intel community for 4 years.
Okay.
So I went to basic training in 2010.
Now that you guys have made the transition in the PSYOP, and you guys have been working in the PSYOP regiment for quite some time now, you have some deployment, some experience under your belt, and ultimately you have a whole lot more clarity on what it truly is to be a PSYOPer and apply that craft. So now that you are where you are now, how has that transition from intel over into PSYOP been? And ultimately, what kind of skills do you find advantageous now as a PSYOPer that you learned in the intel community to help apply that to your craft now? Blake, I'll start with you.
So like most people, I had like a base understanding of PSYOP. I was like, most people hear like we just throw leaflets, pamphlets out of a bird, and that's the extent of what you hear about PSYOP. Coming from intel to PSYOP, I didn't realize how many skills from being an analyst would transfer over to PSYOP.
Okay.
You can agree with me on this. Being, before you go anywhere, you have to do your analysis. Mm-hmm. You're still analyzing data. You have to, using your skill set of how to find data to understand the region you're working in through, like PSYOP. And then another thing that helped a lot was targeting. We do a lot of targeting and understand targeting as a whole. And then like how PSYOP falls into the entire F3 EAD cycle.
Okay.
And then how we work so close to intel cells to gather information and data to help feed the targeting in the overall mission.
Okay. So. Yeah, and I could definitely see how that would be beneficial because, if you look at any successful example of PSYOP, it's because during the planning for the operation or for the products, they put in place measures to not only be able to measure the performance of the products or the series or whatever they're putting out to see if it's working, but then ultimately also another checks and balances in order to measure the effectiveness. And ultimately what that is just analysis. And it all starts with a good analysis of the TA. So I could definitely see how coming from a background that requires a lot of analytics and measuring the numbers and looking at the numbers and determining why they matter, why they don't, percentages, etc., how that bleeds over into being a more effective PSYOPer and bolstering your skills in the analysis set. And then the whole targeting piece, I think that's critical too, especially, I know you because we're both from the same company. We both spent time in 9th Battalion, and targeting is a big piece of tactical PSYOP. I don't have a whole lot of regional experience, but I know at least on the tactical side, that's very much what we're doing. We're bolstering that targeting cycle. In each phase, we should have in that targeting cycle. So everything you said makes sense. Sir, what about you from the officer side of the house? Coming from all source intelligence and having your finger in a bunch of different pots in the intel community, what skill sets did you bring over that you found extremely useful as a 37 Alpha?
Sure. I would say with Intel and PSYOP, there's two major things that they share and excel at, which is dealing with ambiguity and the need to adapt. So more so now than ever, we're inundated with a massive amount of information that's on the battlefield, or even as we search for it in the information warfare battle. So I would say that intel officers and PSYOP officers both are great at taking a massive amount of information and determining or distilling that so what factor, or what is important for the commander for his decision-making process. That in mind too, for soldiers and officers alike, intel would do a lot of red teaming in the conventional army as well, determining the most likely course of action and the most dangerous course of action from the enemy. Again, put in their mindset, or getting to be put in their shoes, determining what would be most likely to be faced from them on the battlefield, which is very much what PSYOP does too, in a way, is looking at a population or an enemy and determining what is their most likely behavior to be seen, what's the most dangerous, and also how can we shape and adapt that to kind of suit our commander's intent. So I would really say we do well with a lot of data and sifting through that ambiguity to distill like what's important and vital.
Absolutely. And something that I also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I obviously don't come from an intel background, but I'm going to make some conclusions, at least from my opinion, is with the intel community, you're analyzing a whole lot of metrics and actions and information, turning that into actionable intel, etc. And with us in PSYOP, we can drive that behavior to create a spike in intel collect. So I guess like from an intel analyst perspective, you're looking at the intel as it comes in and you're sifting out what's important, what's not. And now as a PSYOPer, you can drive behavior to generate more information coming in, which ultimately creates more intelligence. Is that fair to say that the skill you have as a PSYOPer in changing and shifting behavior could ultimately create more actionable intel, and now you understand that better coming from an intel background?
So sure, I could definitely say that that's true. I would also say that coming from an intel background, we understand what IRs or intel requirements are kind of structured like, or what they're aimed at to get, and so we're very much fluent in that kind of vernacular and structuring or formatting. So not only do the intel community, if you guys are thinking about coming over, you kind of know what to get after and how to structure those requirements. You've also been involved in ISR assets, or trying to sync those up. I know that on my tactical deployments too, we utilize those for jamming and other message dissemination platforms. So you're already like well versed in not only what messages to look for, how to get the messages out there, and then also to collect on the effects once those messages have been disseminated.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. If you have comments, suggestions, or other topic recommendations, leave them in the comments section below. As always, subscribe to our channel and follow us at 8PSYOP Group on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.